I don't remember exactly how old I was. 7, maybe 8. That age where the world is still small enough to fit inside a house, and a house is big enough to hide 1,000 secrets. Most people look back at their childhood as a series of bright, sunny snapshots. Mine is a series of quiet rooms and the heavy, suffocating feeling of being watched. I was a normal child. I didn't see ghosts. I didn't talk to monsters. I was quiet, observant, and very, very good at pretending I was alone. But I wasn't. There was Zach. Even now, decades later, the name feels like a stone in my mouth. Imaginary friend is a lie we tell parents so they don't stop sleeping at night. Zach wasn't imaginary. He was a presence, a weight, a person who shouldn't have been there, but was.
He didn't appear in a flash of light. He didn't come from a dream. I simply looked up from my toys one afternoon and he was there. He was an old man, not grandparent old. He looked neglected, like something left in an attic for 50 years. His beard was gray, thin, and hung in oily clumps. His hair was long and matted, covering his ears. He sat in the corner of my room, not on a chair, but just crouching, his back pressed against the wood of my wardrobe. He didn't look like a stranger. He felt like a memory I hadn't had yet. "Go on," he whispered. His voice was thin, dry, like dead leaves skittering across a sidewalk. "Line them up, the red one first." He was talking about my cars, and he was right. I always put the red one first.
Zach didn't tell me stories about magic. He told me things that a child should never know. He told me about the way the house settled at night. He told me which floorboards groaned and which ones stayed silent if you stepped on them just right. He taught me how to breathe without making a sound, how to hold my breath until my chest burned, just so I could hear what was happening in the next room. "Knowledge is safety," he would say. He never left the room when my parents came in. He would just move. He was incredibly fast for an old man. He would slide under the bed or melt into the shadows of the closet with a fluid, sickening grace. My parents would stand there, smiling at their creative boy, never knowing that 2 feet away, a man in a rotting coat was staring at them ankles. I started serving him. 2 glasses of milk, 2 slices of bread. I'd leave his portion on the floor by the closet. I'd turn my back, count to 10, and when I looked again, the bread was gone. Not vanished, but gone. And I could hear him chewing, a wet, rhythmic sound in the dark. By the 2nd year, Zach started getting bolder. He didn't just stay in the room anymore. I would see him in the reflection of the TV when it was turned off. I would see the hem of his dark coat disappearing around the corner of the hallway. He stopped being polite. He started taking things. My favorite marble, a picture of my grandmother, a small pocket knife my father had given me. "I need these," Zach would whisper, "to remember what it's like to be out there." One night, I woke up and he wasn't in the corner. He was standing right over me. I could smell him. He smelled of old copper, damp earth, and something sweet like rotting fruit. He was leaning down, his face inches from mine. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and a pale, milky blue. He wasn't looking at me. He was breathing me in. Every time I exhaled, he would inhale, as if he were trying to catch every bit of air that came out of my lungs. Then
just stopped. I came home from school and the house felt light. The air was thin. The shadows were just shadows. I ran to my room. I checked the closet. I checked under the bed. Nothing. Zach was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. He had simply vacated. I felt a strange, hollow grief. I had been shared for so long that being alone felt like a deformity. My parents were relieved. They said I had finally grown out of my phase. But I knew better. I noticed the things they didn't. I noticed the small, oily smudge on the back of my wardrobe where he used to lean. I noticed that the floorboard under my bed didn't groan anymore because it had been pressed down so many times it had finally snapped. And I noticed the window in the attic. It was unlatched. It had been unlatched for months.
I am 32 years old now. I live in a different city, in a different house. I am a rational man. I have a job, a mortgage, and a wife who loves me. But I never, ever leave a glass of water out at night. A few weeks ago, I went back to my parents' house to help them move. I went into my old bedroom. It was empty, dusty, and smaller than I remembered. I stood in the spot where Zach used to sit. I reached my hand behind the heavy wardrobe into the narrow gap between the wood and the wall. My fingers brushed against something. Paper. I pulled it out. It was the picture of my grandmother, the one that had gone missing 20 years ago. But it was different. The eyes had been scratched out, not with a pen, but with something sharp, something like a fingernail. I am sitting in my living room now. The house is quiet. My wife is asleep upstairs. I told myself for years that Zach was a hallucination, a product of a lonely brain, a way to cope with a quiet life. It's the only way to stay sane. But a few minutes ago, the air in this room changed. It got heavy. It got cold. And then, from the darkness of the hallway, I heard it. A thin, dry, skittering sound, like dead leaves on a sidewalk. And then, the sound of someone taking a long, deep, rhythmic breath. I am not going to turn around. I am not going to look, because I realized that Zach didn't leave my childhood home because he was done with me. He left because he finally knew how to find me anywhere.
I'm going to say this as plainly as I can because I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to turn it into something dramatic. I'm not. I've actually waited weeks to talk about it. I kept telling myself it would pass if I didn't give it attention. My daughter and I live outside the city. It's not isolated in a survivalist way, but it's quiet, trees on all sides, a long dirt road. At night you don't hear traffic. You hear insects, wind, sometimes animals moving in the brush. It's the kind of place people say is peaceful, and it is, most of the time. It's just me and her. She's 10, smart kid, sensitive but not fragile. She sleeps upstairs. I work from home. We have a routine. Dinner at 6, homework, shower, lights out by 9. It's boring in the best way. I like boring. That's why I noticed when her sleep changed. At first, it was normal kid stuff, nightmares. She'd call my name, I'd go upstairs, she'd be crying. I'd sit on the bed and tell her it was just a dream. Every parent does that. You don't panic over nightmares. Kids have them. But hers didn't fade.
They got specific and consistent. She started waking up at almost the same time every night, around 2:40, sometimes 2:43. I know because I began checking the clock out of habit. You notice patterns when you're tired enough. She would be shaking, not screaming every time, but breathing hard, like she'd been running. When I asked what she saw, she didn't describe monsters, no faces, no shapes. She kept saying the same thing. There's something in the trees. Not in the house, not in the room, in the trees. And she'd say it like that, quiet, like stating a fact, not like a kid trying to scare me. She said in the dream she couldn't see it clearly, but it knew she was there, and it was trying to get closer. Every time she explained it, she'd press her hands to her chest and say the fear felt too big for her body. Those were her words, too big. That part bothered me more than anything, because that's not how kids usually talk about nightmares. That sounds like panic.
The detail she added later is what made it hard to ignore. A few weeks into this, she told me that when she wakes up from the dream, she hears laughing outside. Not loud, not theatrical, not a movie sound. She said it sounded like a woman laughing far away, like someone trying not to be heard. I told her it was probably an animal. Foxes scream, coyotes make strange noises, wind carries sound in weird ways out here. I explained all of that calmly. I even pulled up videos. I wanted her to feel stupid for being scared, in a gentle way. She watched the videos, and she shook her head. That's not it. She wasn't dramatic about it. She didn't insist. She just disagreed. After that, she started sleeping with her light on. I let it go. Kids go through phases. You pick your battles. But I started waking up before she called me, around the same time every night. No alarm, just awake, like my body expected it. I'd lie there, listening. Most nights there was nothing, just the house settling, trees moving, normal rural noise. And I'd feel relieved, embarrassed even, like I'd almost convinced myself of something and caught it in time. Then one night, I heard something I couldn't immediately categorize. It wasn't loud. It was human-shaped. That's the only way I can say it. A sound with intention behind it. I sat up in bed and waited for it to repeat so I could identify it, because everything has an explanation once you hear it twice. It didn't repeat, and that silence was worse. I stayed awake until morning. I didn't tell her. Around this time, I made a mistake. I let a personal thought mix into it. My ex-husband remarried last year. His wife has a reputation. I'm not saying I believe in any of that, but people talk. Small communities do that. They attach meaning to things they don't understand. They say she's into rituals, spiritual stuff, witchcraft, whatever word you want to use. I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in supernatural revenge. But when you're exhausted and your kid is waking up terrified every night, your brain starts connecting dots it normally wouldn't even see. I hated that about myself. I started double-checking locks, closing curtains tighter, not because of magic, but because I suddenly became aware of how exposed a house in the woods actually is. Anyone could walk up to it. That's the thought that stuck. Not something invisible. Someone. A person is always more frightening than a ghost, because a person is real, and real things can touch you.
I installed cameras,
Motion lights. I told myself this was responsible parenting, not paranoia. Rural houses get prowlers, that's a fact. Preparation is normal. The cameras showed nothing. Night after night, empty yard, trees, wind. But my daughter's nightmares continued, and then I heard it clearly. I was half asleep, that drifting state where sounds slide into dreams. I heard a laugh, short, dry, almost a cough shaped like laughter. My eyes opened instantly. I held my breath. I waited for my brain to label it as something harmless. It didn't. I got out of bed and went to the window. I didn't open it. I didn't move the curtain much, just enough to see the yard. Nothing. Motion light off. No figures. No movement. I stood there long enough for my legs to start shaking from adrenaline, because my body had already decided there was danger, even if my eyes couldn't confirm it. Upstairs, my daughter screamed my name. I ran. She was sitting upright in bed, crying, saying she heard it again, the laugh, same timing. That overlap is what I can't smooth over in my head. Two people hearing something at the same time in different rooms after a nightmare. Coincidence exists, I know that, but coincidence has weight when it repeats.
After that night, I stopped pretending this was just bad sleep. I called the sheriff's office. I didn't mention laughter. I said I thought someone might be walking near the property at night. They did a drive-by, found nothing, told me to call again if it happened. I started staying awake past 3 a.m. on purpose, watching the camera feed. Nothing ever appeared, but the feeling of being watched settled into the house. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a constant awareness in the back of my neck, like when you know someone is standing behind you in a grocery store line without turning around. You don't see them, you feel the space occupied. My daughter stopped describing the dreams in detail. That scared me more than the dreams themselves. Kids talk about fears until they're bored of them. She went quiet. She just asked if she could sleep in my room. I said yes immediately. The first night she did, we both woke up at the same time. No scream, no sound, just awake. And the house felt wrong. Heavy air, like before a storm. But there was no storm. We lay there listening. Nothing happened. That's what makes it worse to explain, the absence of an event carrying the same emotional impact as an event. We didn't talk about it in the morning.
I still live in that house. The cameras are still up. The locks are checked every night. Her nightmares come and go now, less frequent, but not gone. Sometimes she asks if we can move. I tell her we'll think about it, because I don't want to admit the real reason I hesitate is that I'm afraid of confirming something by leaving, like running from a place makes the fear solid. And I want this to stay explainable. Animals, stress, suggestion, shared anxiety between a parent and a child. There are textbooks full of reasons this could happen. I repeat that to myself constantly, but every once in a while, when the house is quiet and the trees are still, I catch myself listening, not for footsteps, not for voices, for that laugh. And the part I don't like admitting, the part that makes me feel irrational, is that I'm no longer afraid of hearing it. I'm afraid of the night it doesn't come, because that's when I'll know it finally got closer. I grew up in a place that people would probably call ideal now. Quiet, rural, a lot of water and trees. I was around 13 at the time. My brothers were close in age to me. We were spaced about a year and a half apart, so we did everything together. We were outside more than we were inside, swimming in the river, fishing, walking trails we weren't supposed to walk, that kind of childhood. I'm saying that first because I don't want this to sound like I was a nervous kid or prone to imagination. We were active, we were loud, we weren't scared of the woods. The woods were just part of daily life. We knew every bend in the river and every abandoned fence line within walking distance. There was a property we weren't supposed to go onto. Everyone knew it. It wasn't fenced properly, but it had that reputation adults give places when they don't want kids hanging around. Old house, collapsed in on itself, and a single large tree in the middle of what used to be the yard. Even from a distance, you could tell it was older than everything around it. We'd passed it 100 times before, never felt anything about it. It was just another ruined place, until the day we decided to cut across it. We were already far from home that afternoon, farther than we usually went. We'd been following the river and ended up looping back through brush to save time. That's how we came up on the property from the backside instead of the road. The air felt different there, and I know that sounds dramatic, but what I mean is it was quieter than it should have been. No insects, no birds. You don't notice how loud nature is until it stops. We didn't say anything about it at first. Kids don't narrate their discomfort. You just keep moving and pretend everything's normal. That tree was right in the center, bigger close up than it looked from the road. The trunk was thick enough that all three of us couldn't have wrapped our arms around it. The ground around it was strangely bare, no grass right at the base, just packed dirt. Then we heard the sound. It wasn't loud, it was irregular, like something dragging slowly against bark, a dry, scraping noise. We stopped walking at the same time. I remember that clearly. None of us told the others to stop, we just did. One of my brothers said it was probably an animal. That made sense. There are always animals in trees, raccoons, possums, something stuck. So we stepped closer. When we got within maybe 15 feet, the tree moved. I don't mean leaves rustling. There was no wind. The entire trunk shifted, not a sway like in a storm, but a shudder, a full-body vibration. The bark made a crapping sound, deep and low, like a wooden beam under stress. We froze. The scraping noise got louder, and layered under it was something that I still don't have a clean word for. It wasn't a voice, it wasn't an animal cry, it was closer to pressure, a sound that felt pushed out instead of spoken, like air forced through something narrow. The tree shook again, harder. Dirt fell away from the roots. I saw the soil lift and settle. That's when my body reacted before my thoughts did. My chest locked, my hands went numb. I couldn't process it as fear yet. It was just physical shutdown. My brothers looked exactly the same, pale, mouths open, no one yelling, no one moving. Then the sound came again, longer, and the tree jerked so violently that a dead branch snapped and hit the ground. We ran, not screaming, not talking, just running as fast as we could through brush and uneven ground. I remembered tripping and scraping my knee and not feeling it. We didn't stop until we hit the riverbank, where everything looked normal again. We stood there, bent over, trying to breathe, and none of us wanted to be the first to describe what we'd seen, because saying it out loud would have made it solid.
We spent the walk home trying to turn it into something reasonable. Wind shear, underground collapse, an animal trapped in the root system, a rotten trunk shifting. Every explanation we offered sounded thin, but we kept stacking them anyway. Kids are good at forcing logic over fear if it means they can sleep that night. When we told our father, we edited the story. We said the tree cracked and scared us. He nodded and said old trees split all the time. That was the answer he needed, and once an adult gives you explanation, you're supposed to accept it. But the part we didn't tell him was the sound, because none of us could agree on what it resembled, and admitting that felt like admitting we'd imagined it. For weeks after, we avoided that path. Not officially, no pact, we just didn't go near it. If our wandering took us in that direction, one of us would suggest the river instead, and the others would agree too quickly. That should have been the end of it.
A month later, maybe more, we heard that the property had been cleared. A crew came in and cut the tree down. My father mentioned it casually at dinner, said it was dangerous, could have fallen on the road. I felt relief when he said it, actual relief, like a problem I didn't know I'd been carrying just resolved itself. But then he added something strange. He said the workers had trouble getting the stump out. The root system was tangled with old debris underground, scrap metal, broken containers, and something that smelled so bad they thought an animal had been buried there. He laughed when he said it, told it like a funny inconvenience. I didn't laugh, because I pictured that bare circle of dirt around the trunk and how nothing grew there. We never went back to look. None of us did, even after it was gone, even knowing it was gone. That's the part I can't explain. Kids are curious. We should have gone to see the empty space. We should have kicked through the dirt looking for whatever they dug up. We didn't. We treated that patch of land like it still belonged to something.
I'm an adult now. I've lived in cities. I've worked around heavy equipment. I understand soil pressure and root systems and how trees fail. I can build a full mechanical explanation for what we saw that day. And I do when I talk about it casually. But when I remember the silence before the shaking and the sound that came out of that trunk, my brain stops cooperating, because fear that strong doesn't come from nothing. 3 kids don't share the exact same hallucination at the exact same moment. That's not how memory works. I still talk to my brothers about it sometimes. We are careful with the language. We keep it technical. Structural failure, gas pocket release, wildlife disturbance. We never repeat the sound. None of us have tried to imitate it. Not once. Not as a joke, not drunk, not nostalgic. There's an agreement there we've never discussed, and I don't like what that says about how sure we actually are.
Some stories end, but they never leave. They stay with you long after the silence returns. So when the lights go out tonight, listen carefully, because now the night remembers you.